I started this year's Pride Month off by sharing a comic I made about my journey from religious homophobe to proud bisexual, and how complicated of a relationship I have with my identity due to things I did to other queer people in the past. You can find the full version up on my Instagram if you want to read through it. And I wasn't expecting all the supportive, positive responses I got. A lot of people thanked me for sharing my experience with this. I was actually hesitant to share my story of being a queer ex-homophobe and experience with religious trauma, but after the responses I got from the comic, I think I'm ready to share more. So here's launching a project I've been working on for the past few months. I grew up in the Church of Christ, and when I got out and started learning more about the various Christian denominations, I found out it's a pretty small one. The only really prominent ex-Church of Christ person I came across when I started delving into the atheist/secular humanist YouTube was Tracy Harris, who used to be on the Atheist Experience. So to fill that void, I'm going to start making videos about what it was like growing up in that culture. And I think a good way to give the full impression of that environment is by diving into Church of Christ Facebook posts. I'm still in touch with some people from church on there, and looking at the things they post now that I've done a full 180 is a bizarre experience. So in honor of Pride Month, I'm delving into a story from Church of Christ Facebook about someone I used to know that should give you a pretty good impression about what the church thinks about queer issues. Content warning, there will be homophobia and transphobia with religious justifications. So if those aren't things you're in a good headspace to encounter, feel free to go enjoy the rest of Pride Month and maybe come back for the next video. A common thread in the Church of Christ is only being able to see the world through their specific lens. Everything has to point back to their view of the world with little to no attempt to understand the other side. You have the We Claim the Rainbow, where they get mad that the gays are using the rainbow to show pride when they hold that it was a sign from God to Noah that he'll never destroy the world in a global flood again, even though the rainbow has different meanings across cultures and myths, but for some reason theirs is the only one that matters. You have the complete misunderstanding of the word pride and the need to shove in a Bible verse whenever possible. You of course have the marriage is only between a man and a woman according to God, even though it's also a legal status that comes with certain benefits and recognition. You have the transphobic stuff that completely conflates sex and gender and uses a very loose definition of truth that is, again, centered around their God. Then you have the calling to repentance posts, where they try to emphasize the seriousness of engaging in sin. They truly want you to be saved and will quote Bible verse after Bible verse to shame you into thinking there is something you need to be saved from. But they want you to know that they do this out of love. They become very irate when you imply that they're doing all this spiritual warfare out of hate, even though that's how it comes off in the more aggressive posts. So what happens when someone keeps those beliefs and the love, but tries to take out the aggressiveness? I don't have the original post, but one night while I was scrolling through Facebook in bed, I found a few comments left by someone I used to know which broke my heart. Let's call them S. They replied to someone else's comment by saying, "I'm gay and happily married to a woman. Sex is not my god. Sexual orientation is not my identity." The other person, "Stop calling yourself gay. If I stop shopping at Walmart, am I still a Walmart shopper? Also, God forgives and forgets. Stop reminding him of your sinful past. Plus, by reminding yourself of your sinful past, you might fall back into it. Not only will it hurt you, but your family dreadfully." S. I have same-sex attractions. Gay doesn't mean sexually active or interested. Stop assuming what I mean. S. I talk about it because it is my testimony. In the same way Paul talks about how he murdered Christians, I talk about my experiences. I know for a fact that there are tons of teens and Christians in our churches that won't ever say a word about their struggles. They won't say anything to anyone. All they know is that they're different. And then their secular friends will affirm them to embrace their impulses. Our churches are failing our teens by not proactive in talking to them about sexuality and gender. I typically don't use the term gay because it does get confusing. Someone asked what the word trans means. S. It is an antonym of cisgender. Literally speaking, if you experience gender dysphoria or incongruity, you are trans. I would fall under this category, but I don't believe in transitioning either via dress, hormones, or SS. I've heard of people like Jackie Hill Perry who have overcome this sin and repented, but To hear that same thing from someone I've stood in the same room with is something else. It scares me that I could very well be saying those same things today if my life hadn't gone this way. I also made a follow-up post about the comments they left. It's pretty long, so bear with me. In a recent comment, I mentioned being gay. Of course, I felt like that was situated in a context, but it seemed to cause confusion. So let me be clear here. My goal here is for transparency and as a testimony. Earlier this year, I came out about my gender dysphoria that I felt in my teen years. My childhood was riddled with lots of demons, things I never could seem to talk about, or things that I could never put names to. Why couldn't I talk about them? Well, because of fear of being ostracized, shamed, and shunned, and I wasn't quite sure of myself anyways. For instance, I wasn't able to put a label to my autism until I was diagnosed with it in 2018, and thus a lot of retrospection came about in that light. It made sense to me why I was always bullied, teased in locker rooms at high school for not being male-ish, why I never quite felt like I fit in. When I mentioned being gay, I have never been in a relationship with someone of the same sex. I have had, however, attractions to the same sex, commonly referred to as same-sex attraction or SSA. I did used to sneak in chat rooms as a teen and talk to strangers on the internet, and I did struggle for 15 years with a porn addiction that started when I was 10. When I mentioned being gay, however, I did not mean that I fantasize about being in a relationship with a member of the same sex. Why not keep that to myself, and why use sharp words like gay instead of SSA? Because there are thousands of people just like me in your churches. That's simply not guessing, it's statistically true. Someone in your youth group, someone in your family is unbeknownst to you struggling with their identity. If you are waiting on them to talk about their struggles, you're probably going to be disappointed. Because what will inevitably happen is that they won't talk about it. They'll talk about it with the wrong person and get lambasted, or they'll talk about it with people who will affirm LGBTQ plus lifestyles and encourage them to indulge in their flesh. My openness has helped several people. In my opinion, the church has failed, and is failing its use by not being proactive in talking to them about sexuality and gender. I'm talking about this as a testimony. I'm talking about this to speak to those who are struggling silently in the pew. I'll intend to post some resources below that I recommend to you. S gives an alternative to the shame-based attitudes to the post from before, which makes them seem like a loving refuge for the young people in the church, but still holds that people who are accepting of their queer identities are the enemy who wants them to indulge their flesh. Human feelings and thoughts are still posed as things to be overcome. And it's not just S, a blog called Her Life His Way echoes these sentiments. I wish I had had the sense to see that he was struggling with temptation. I wish I had known then what I know now, that the struggle and temptation aren't the problem, only giving in to them is. I wish I had thought to say gently, with understanding, is this something you are struggling with, rather than harshly and dismissively saying, but you know that's wrong, right? And then never bringing it up again. I wish I had had the wisdom and experience I have now, so I could tell them, same-sex attraction is just another temptation like any other. You're not weird, this world's broken. I wish I could walk with him through his feelings, gently and kindly with understanding, showing him they were just feelings and not his identity. I wish the church did a better job of teaching us to talk to people through their struggles, no matter their struggle, because it is not your particular struggle or temptation that defines you, whether or not you choose to give in to it and let it overcome you. If someone comes to you and they're struggling, no matter what the struggle is, 1, feel privileged that they came to you. 2, realize that the fact they are seeking help shows the goodness of their hearts in this matter. 3, affirm their attitudes and the fact that we all are tempted at times. This is just part of living in this world. They can do what is right. And 4, make sure you regularly lift them up with encouragement and prayer. We can't be shocked when those around us struggle with any temptation this world has to offer. The world makes sin easily available and attractive looking. Instead of expressions of shock and surprise and burdens of shame, do your best to give sympathy and support. The struggle might not be anything like your struggle, but you have struggled right. If all you have are harsh words and shame for the struggling, it will most likely result in the struggle running to anyone who will accept them just as they are. Haven't we all had struggles and temptations that are against God's will for us? We need each other. We need others to understand we are human and this world is broken. We need others to point us back to Christ when the world gets too loud. In both of these, I see people trying to love in the only way that God will let them, but not questioning if that God is truly loving. I don't see what many people associate with the word bigot. The well-meaning people who are terribly and sadly misinformed about love. Love to them seems to mean obedience and helping others enact obedience. I think that's one of the more insidious messages in the Church of Christ, whether people realize they're perpetuating it or not. The very idea of love is perverted to the point that even good people fall victim to it. I was one of those people. It took me longer than I wish it had for me to realize that, but I'm glad I'm finally learning what love really is. Happy Pride Month, everyone.